Welcome everybody, this is Lonzo Garrison. I'm here with...
Rhonda Kallman.
This is the CEO and founder of Boston Harbor Distillery. And today, we're going to be talking to Rhonda about Boston Harbor Distillery. So Rhonda, you mind introducing yourself and, telling us about you and, what you have built, this beautiful place?
Oh, sure. Well, thanks for having me. And thanks for being here.
Well, thanks for
Your
having us,
first
actually.
time, right?
Yeah,
Your
I
first
love it.
time here in this hidden gem of
Yes,
Boston.
I know.
My name's Rhonda Kallman, and I have always loved whiskey. That's how I guess I introduce myself these days. Ever since I was a little girl, I loved whiskey.
Yeah.
My father used to drink rye. Mm-hmm. He'd fall asleep, and I'd drink his drink while he was sleeping.
You fall asleep right after him?
Yeah, right on. Run around, burn it off. Back then, anyway. No, I've always loved it. And in 1984, I was lucky enough to help Jim Koch start the Boston Beer Company.
Okay, nice.
Which is makers of Samuel Adams beer and Twisted Tea and a whole bunch of other stuff.
Yeah.
And so I spent 15 years helping him make that company a household name.
Nice.
That was pretty exciting.
Yeah.
And what I loved most about that, when I look back on that experience, was craft and the meaning of what craft really is. As we know, craft has been corrupted by the big guys and marketing departments all over.
Yeah.
But what I learned when I was there, just seeing the reaction of people describing how beer is made and the ingredients and the choices that we made and selected and what makes that special beer different.
Right.
And I just loved that. And as we grew and we got bigger, I mean, the quality was still there, but it was all different. And I really found myself missing that sort of one-on-one education.
Yeah.
So being born and raised within 20 miles of here, my mother's from Dorchester, West Roxbury, Mattapan, this whole area, Chelsea. I decided that I'm going to take a page out of what we did with Sam Adams and fill the white space for whiskey making in Boston.
Nice.
Just like we did with beer.
Yeah.
35 years, 40 years ago, sometime like that. I don't know, a long time ago. And so that's what I did. My husband is a builder, and we were looking for a place to start our whiskey distillery.
Yeah.
And there was so much traffic on the expressway one Friday afternoon. We were coming out of Southie, looking at a building there that just was too small and didn't make sense. And it was so much traffic, we saw Venezia restaurant from the highway, and he said, let's go down there for a cocktail on Friday afternoon. I'm like, okay. And we roll into this parking lot, and there was this falling down, dilapidated junk collector's warehouse.
Yeah.
And it was all boarded up, and it was so sad and tired. And he said, there's your distillery.
Oh, wow.
I said, that piece of crap? He said, yeah, that. So we went to the restaurant and asked the bartender what was happening. He said, I think the owner wants to rent it out. So the next day we met with Ralph Bruno, and I signed a 20-plus year lease here. So I've been at this for 10 years.
Yep.
We opened our doors 7 years ago.
Nice.
And we are living my dream, which is making great whole grain whiskeys. And I built this to really be the center of education for all things booze.
Yeah.
For Boston.
Yeah.
And the area.
Yeah.
And, Boston's known for education, and why not?
Yeah.
So that's what I'm doing.
Yeah. That's pretty awesome because Boston has so much to offer, with beers, the farms, and the fact that, we make whiskey here as well. It's just so much to offer. So, for you to, find your niche and just really, establish yourself in the city, this big, small city. That's
right.
That's
I say my beloved city of Boston, that kicks your ass. But I still, it isn't every day. What is it, But I do love it.
Yeah.
And what this building has done for me, I knew I wanted to make whiskey, and I didn't know what to call it.
Yeah.
And usually, at least in my business, that you get a brand idea and you build a company around it.
Yeah.
This time I knew I wanted to make whiskey, and I wanted to do it here in Boston. I didn't have a brand idea.
Yeah.
So again, we had to renovate this whole place from top to bottom.
Yeah.
It took a long time, took years actually.
Yeah.
And we were in here painting one night, and it dawned on me that this was this has so much history here.
Yeah.
And it was the Putnam Nail Factory.
Mm-hmm.
So this whole 18-acre parcel that we're on
Yep.
has been the center of entrepreneurial commerce since the mid-1800s, and it was started by this guy, Silas Putnam.
Mm-hmm.
And the Putnam family lineage is pretty strong here, Putnam Investments.
Yeah.
The horse and rider on our label is General Israel Putnam, the
Yep.
Revolutionary War hero, which was Silas's uncle. And so here it was, right under my nose. Well, why don't I call my whiskey Putnam?
Yeah.
You know, trying to get horses and whiskey, and that imagery for whiskey has always got a horse in it.
Yeah.
And I go, how am I going to get horses in Boston?
Right.
We have a lot of horses' asses, but not that many horses.
That's true.
So that's how the horse ended up as our logo and the horseshoe now. So Putnam is our whiskey line. That's our flagship.
Mm-hmm.
But then when the car came in and there was no need for horseshoe nails, this building was the George Lawley shipyard.
Yeah.
And that's the inspiration for the nautical line of our small batch New England style rums and our beautiful citrus forward gin.
Mm-hmm.
And Lawley's built minesweepers for World War II in this building.
Wow.
They too had government contracts.
Yeah.
And so they made minesweepers for World War II. So
Wow.
that was the inspiration for the nautical line.
Wow.
And then when the war ended, they went out of business.
Yeah.
And the last notable entrepreneur to have commerce here was the Seymour's Ice Cream Factory.
Okay.
So Dorchester Ice Cream. It was.
Yeah.
And so that's the inspiration for the confectionery line, which is the maple rum cream.
Yep.
Which is, if you like Bailey's, this is 10 times better.
Yeah.
Fresher. This maple is our signature sweetener. Our coffee liqueur. So they really are an upmarket to Kahlua and Bailey's.
Yeah.
And our espresso martini, ready to
Favorite,
drink,
you know?
ready to shake and pour.
Ready?
So this building has done so much for me other than provide this beautiful place where history and passion and quality come together in a bottle. It's just magical here.
Yeah. That's amazing. That's really amazing because there's really a lot of history in this building. And you can kind of tell too, like when you first walk in, that it just has that like that feeling, like, you know, I'm back in like, you know, like the early 1900s or, you know, like 1800s even, like, you know, trying to start your own whiskey company. Well, not trying. Well, you did start it. But
I did, yeah.
and you're doing
No turning back now.
It's like, what are some of the challenges that you faced like when you first started? Because it sounds like, you know, when I got off what you were saying with the working at with Samuel Adams, like, you know, crafting beer is the craft and the art of it. So like, you know, what brought you over to like, you know, the whiskey side and, you know?
Well, it's a bit of a story, but I'll try to keep it short. When I left Boston Beer Company, you know, I'd spent 15 years helping to make Sam Adams a household name clear across the country. I traveled all over the country and I loved what I did. And we went public and we just got bigger and, you know, the business changed and it needed to change. And I found myself behind a desk and in conference rooms with people I didn't really love anymore.
Yeah.
And I still love Jim, but it wasn't him. You know, it changes. And I got further and further away from the craft of it.
Yeah.
And being at the point of purchase where people are enjoying it at a bar, a restaurant, even in a package store, just seeing what they're doing. So I left. There was one article that said I was the queen of beer. I stepped off my throne as the queen of beer. And I started another beer company in 2000. And it was the first brewing company of the new millennium, I think, in the United States.
Yeah.
And I called it New Century Brewing Company.
Oh, nice.
Yep. And
Fun
I
fact.
made a beer called Edison.
Okay.
And it was made for me by the man who invented light beer in 1967.
Oh, nice.
So I did, his name was 080s, kind of a hard name to say. So I called it Edison after Edison, the inventor. So you know, it's the spirit of invention, innovation, and light. And it was a light beer made from scratch to be light. So it wasn't a regular Edison and then a light Edison.
Yeah.
It was Edison was Edison.
Yeah.
It was light. So, and I launched that on the eve of 9/11.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. In New York and Boston, where things just were not the same for a long time. So
Yeah.
that was really difficult. All the money dried up that I thought I could raise.
Yeah.
But I kept it going. And in 2003, I started looking at what everybody was drinking. And it was clearly, well, it was Starbucks.
Yep.
It was Red Bull.
Yep.
And even Mountain Dew. And
Yeah.
on this, old, anyway, Code Red was doing really well.
Yeah, I remember that.
And it was a caffeinated story.
Yeah.
So I called Dr. Owades, who's actually invented light beer in 1967, and said, Joe, can you make me a beer with caffeine?
Yeah.
And he hung up the phone on me. And I called him back, and I explained the business reasons, which were, there's $100 billion worth of beer annually consumed in the United States, $100 billion.
Wow.
And
That's
if you're a beer lover
Yeah.
and you want a little pick-me-up, you got to leave beer
Yep.
and go to god-awful Red Bull and vodka,
Yeah.
Irish coffees, Jack and Coke.
Mm.
None of them were beer.
Right.
So he called me back 2 days later. He said, we can do it. So we had a patent on the process of adding caffeine to beer and ale in 4 countries, including this one.
Okay, nice.
Very nice. And Joe was in his 80s and he passed away. And so I went to another brewing consultant. I'm not the brewer, I'm not the distiller, but I know enough to be dangerous.
Yeah.
And that brewing consultant gave my proprietary formula to Four Loko and Panther Juice. Yeah. Four Loko, just so my little beer was called Moonshot. And it had 69 milligrams of caffeine in it the year the astronauts landed on the moon.
Yeah.
Which is less than a cup of coffee, which is about 80 milligrams of caffeine. But just enough for a little pick-me-up.
Yeah.
Beer was terrific. It was a Pilsner craft beer. It was wonderful. Four Loko, on the other hand, was like 250 milligrams of caffeine.
Yeah.
12% alcohol in a bottle, red dye, and just like a speedball in a can.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they got shut us down, and I lost heart of the beer business after spending, nearly 3 decades at the forefront of it.
Yeah.
And that's when life hands you lemons. I made whiskey.
Wow. That's amazing. That's amazing that, you've been through all that and you're still here today standing, because I remember at one point, Four Loko was like just a very popular thing. Everybody was talking about it at one point. I mean, the light beer would have been great now because everybody, they're drinking like Miller Lite and like, all these light beers have like 90 calories in it. Everybody's so concerned about the calories and their health nowadays. So right now, it's definitely been a perfect time to
Well, I still own those trademarks and I know everything about it. So if you want to start a beer company, I'll help you.
Oh, let's do it. Let's get it started.
I just thing.
You got it.
I say to my husband and my kids, it's like, I need a minimum of 10 more years. I have so much I have to do.
Yeah. Probably need more than that, because you're just going to want to do more and more and more.
And it'll keep me younger.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
All right. So right now, how many different whiskeys and gins do you guys have right now?
Well, right now, our flagship, like I said, is whiskey. So we have Putnam rye whiskey,
Okay.
whole grain. So if you think about rye, like rye bread versus a white bread,
Right.
white bread is like what bourbon is made from.
Right.
It's corn.
Mm.
So by law, bourbon has to be made with a majority of corn. And because craft beer is kind of anti-corn, Bud, Miller, Coors, Corona, Heineken, they're all corn-based beers.
Yep.
Craft beer is not that.
Okay.
It's richer, it's bolder. So rye, by law, has to be a majority of rye grain.
Yeah.
So we get this beautiful spice to it, but it's really rich. You actually have rye in there.
This beautiful drink that she made for me.
Yeah,
Cheers.
that is our spicy pineapple mule. I'll tell you how that's made. I'm having a spicy painkiller. So the rye whiskey, we actually have a red wine barrel finish that we get Cab Franc barrels from the Boston Winery, which is right here next
Right
door.
across, yeah.
So that's pretty local, right?
Yeah, very local.
And we finish the rye in that, so that gives it a beautiful red ruby hue and this beautiful soft sweetness to it. It's lovely. And we also barrel what's called a single barrel cask strength.
Yeah.
So our rye is bottled at 86 proof. The cask strength is whatever that unique barrel is. So we've had as low as 112 proof as high as I actually just took the last bottle home last night, 131 proof. The highest that ever came out of it. Yeah, it's so good.
Wow.
So we put it in the barrel. By law, it has to go in 125. We put it in at 100, like 120, and sometimes the proof goes up.
Yeah.
And sometimes it goes down.
Yeah.
That went way up.
Wow.
So that's our Putnam Rye line, and then my flagship, the very first whiskey that we made here was a single malt whiskey, which is 100% malted barley.
Yeah.
So it's really rich. So it's really taking like craft beer and turning it into, and we use this lovely roasted malt. That's the one with the black label.
Yep.
So we use this roasted malt that gives, and that was in the mash bill or the grain bill, the ingredients that you select, it's called the mash bill. That was inspired by the Walter Baker Chocolate Factory and Lower Mills.
Right next to my office.
And, and yeah, that was America's oldest chocolatier.
Yeah.
You know, so we wanted to bring some of the local flavor, but we don't grow a lot in Boston.
Yeah.
So that's how we did that.
Nice.
And then our newest whiskey is what's making this spicy.
I like it. I like
yeah,
it a lot.
I can tell.
I like it a lot.
Everybody does. It's called Demon Seed. So there's a little backstory to that. You know, this used to be a little mob playground, and the original Boston Demons were down here at one point.
That's what's called Demon Seed.
Demon Seed, exactly. But there is a whole story, folklore from the ages of the St. Dunstan and the devil.
Yeah.
And the devil walked into his shop, and St. Dunstan recognized him as the devil, so he horseshoed him, and the devil was really upset.
Yeah.
And St. Dunstan said, if you promise never to walk over a door that has a horseshoe over the threshold. So these are original horseshoes that we found in the building.
Oh, wow.
We've always had them here. And so he said, if you promise never to walk over the door, I'll take the horseshoes off. So he did. And that was the inspiration for the logo and the name for Demon Seed.
I like it. I like it a lot.
And we're also distilling Sam Adams beers.
Yep.
And they drink like a whiskey, but the government won't let us call it whiskey.
Yeah.
So anything that doesn't meet a certain designation, you know, for rye whiskey or gin or rum, they all have laws.
Yeah.
It's called a spirit. So if you hear like a wine and spirits thing, spirits is like this catch-all term.
Yeah.
So the distilled beer line is called the Spirit of Boston.
Oh, that's interesting.
And we have 5 or 6 different ones of those.
I did not know that. Yeah. That is very interesting. Wow.
Yeah. Oh, it's so good. You're going to have to get right up to the still.
Yeah.
We'll show you how it's all made.
Okay.
And then the gin, frankly, that was a product of the pandemic. And I know we're making our Lawley's Harborside gin when my distiller comes to work with 2 bags of oranges. Whole oranges. He puts real whole oranges in the still. And the vapors just go through them, and it carries that beautiful freshness and citrus. And there's lemon and tangerine peel and different ginger roots, coriander, and some juniper.
Okay.
And by law, you have to have juniper in there. But like a London Dry gin, Tanqueray, whatever, they have 100% juniper.
Yeah.
So it's that pininess.
Yeah.
We backed off the juniper, and it's more citrus forward.
Yeah.
So we have that. It's out in the market as well. But the green and the red labels is our pear and our cherry brandy barrel finished gins.
Yep.
Amazing. And they're only available right here. So you got to come right here at Boston Harbor Distillery.
That's right. You got to come right here.
And the rums are fabulous. We call them New England style because they're made with 100% molasses.
Okay.
So rum has to be made from sugarcane production. So you get white sugar like Bacardi.
Yeah.
And then Demerara sugar, brown sugar from the Caribbean. A lot of the Caribbean rums, it's molasses-based sugar.
Yeah.
And then there's rum agricole from the French West Indies. So that's like sugarcane juice. And the butt end of the production of molasses, of sugarcane production is molasses. And a lot of people throw that away.
Yeah.
But in our dark days of the triangle trade right here through Boston Harbor, slaves, ammunition, and molasses. So pre-Prohibition, New England was the center of rum production for the United States.
Oh, wow.
And we used molasses up here So it's an earthy sweet versus a sugary sweet. So these rums are just so delicious. So we got a light rum and a dark rum. Yeah.
That's awesome.
It's all good.
Yeah.
And so I don't know how many, I think there's, call it 15 different varieties, probably more. But we're craft, you know, and that's what craft is all about.
Yeah. You could tell, like, you know, with the passion that you speak about every single bottle, like, you know what goes into it, you know, the history behind it. Like, so, like, it makes the experience so much better. And, you know, when you're having a drink, it's all about, you know, enjoying it, enjoying the experience, and, like, you know, hearing the experiences that, you know, that you went through to, you know, make one of these whiskeys. It's amazing. It's actually really amazing.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, it's one customer that came in, he said it was like a history lesson and a shot in every glass.
Yeah.
About. Yeah. But at the end of the day, I mean, I believe in it a lot because it makes me feel good. I mean, I drink a lot of it.
Yeah.
Some will say I drink too much, but hey. But you know, it makes me feel good the next day. I'm not sick. I'm not hungover. I just feel good.
Yeah, that's awesome. So what are your plans for the future for the company? Where do you want to take it? Where do you see it going?
Well,
without giving away any secrets.
No, I don't really have any secrets because you can, you know, it's hard to actually do it.
Yeah.
So, so beer. I guess let me just back up to answer that a little bit in a roundabout way, which is my norm. But to me, beer really is local because beer, once it's put in a package, it's alive. It's live yeast. You know, once it's bottled or kegged or canned, it starts to degrade because beer's best consumed fresh.
Yep.
And that's why in Germany, you know, there was a brewery in every town.
Yeah.
Well, that's what's happened in America.
Yeah.
And so, because the freshest beer is the best.
Yeah.
Distilled spirits are different than that. And by the way, every distilled spirit, whether it's cognac, whiskey, rum, gin, are all gluten-free.
Oh, wow.
People don't know that.
Did not know that.
Tito's capitalized on that, but everything. Now, even our whole grain whiskey, so grain is what has gluten in it.
Right.
But the still that's over there, it distills at such high temperatures that it kills any of the proteins in the gluten from the grains. So anyway, so it's all gluten-free, but once, and the good news is once we put it in a bottle, like, so for our whiskey, we make it here, everything comes off distilled clear. It's the influence of the wood that gives it its color. And we lay it down on site. Right now, all of our whiskeys are over 4 years old. So for 4 years, it's sitting in a barrel.
Yeah.
And when we think it's ready to put in a bottle, and we process it, put it in the bottle, it's when you get it, wherever you are. Could be Asia, could be India, could be Europe, could be California. It tastes as we intended it to taste. So that is the lovely thing about distilled spirits.
Yeah.
It travels well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
so
awesome.
it can go anywhere.
Yeah.
And, you know, I have the unique vantage point, if you will, for knowing what it takes to bring Boston somewhere else with Sam Adams.
Right.
I'm born and raised here.
Yeah.
You know, it's a hard city, but we chose to be here.
Yeah, that's true.
You know, people love it. They've come here. It's meaningful to so many people.
Yeah.
And I'm proud of that.
Yeah.
And so my first goal is to make enough people in Boston aware that we do have excellent distilled spirits coming out of here and whiskey.
Yeah.
And then my second is to extend that to the rest of the country and the world.
Yeah. That's awesome. That is amazing. Well, I mean, hey, I can't wait to see it, and, like, you know, to see you on every shelf in America. You know?
We're getting there.
All right, awesome. Well, Rhonda, it was great. Do you mind if we take a tour of the place?
No,
too,
please.
Look around?
Yeah, let's do it.
Awesome. Let's do this.
I'll drink to that. Thank you.
Thank you.